Imagine this as the lights dim, soft music rises, and a quiet question echoes in the heart. What would you do if today felt ordinary, but eternity was quietly watching? This is where the parable of the faithful servant begins, not as an ancient story locked in scripture, but as a living mirror held up to every soul breathing right now. Spoken by Jesus Christ and recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, this teaching unfolds like a slow-burning cinematic scene, filled with tension, waiting, silence, and sudden revelation. A master leaves his house and places responsibility into the hands of a servant, not with dramatic fanfare, but with quiet trust. No countdown timer is given. No return date is circled on the calendar. And that is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because waiting without certainty has always revealed the true nature of the human heart. As the days stretch on, the house remains standing not because of walls or locks, but because of faithfulness. The faithful servant does not live for applause. He feeds others on time. He keeps the house in order. He shows up on ordinary days with extraordinary consistency. Nothing about this looks viral. Nothing about it looks glamorous. Yet this is the kind of life heaven notices. There is a surprising truth hidden here that many miss. The servant is not praised for brilliance, talent, or charisma, but for reliability. In a world addicted to instant results, this parable whispers a countercultural truth: God values faithfulness more than flash. The servant's greatness is not proven when the master is present, but when the master is absent, when boredom sets in, when no reward seems immediate, and when shortcuts would be easy. But then the story turns darker, more intense, almost like a sudden shift in music. Another servant begins to think differently. He tells himself the master is delayed. Notice how the fall does not begin with rebellion, but with a thought. A single assumption quietly reshapes his behavior. He becomes harsh with others. He indulges himself. He treats responsibility like a burden instead of a trust. And here is one of the most unsettling insights of the parable: wrong living often begins with wrong believing. When people stop believing they will be held accountable, character slowly erodes. This servant does not wake up one day evil, he drifts there, one careless choice at a time, one delayed conscience at a time. Then comes the moment every good story builds toward: the return. Unannounced. Unexpected. Silent until it is not. The master arrives not according to the servant's expectations, but according to his own timing. And suddenly, everything hidden is revealed. Every small act. Every neglected duty. Every private choice now stands in the light. The faithful servant is not scrambling. He is not afraid. He is found doing exactly what he was entrusted to do. And the reward is astonishing. He is not just praised, he is elevated. Greater responsibility is given. This reveals a profound spiritual principle that feels almost paradoxical: faithfulness in small things prepares us for greater glory. Heaven's promotion system looks nothing like the world's. In God's economy, consistency outranks popularity, obedience outweighs noise, and quiet faith shapes eternal futures. As this truth sinks in, the story begins to press closer to home. Because this parable is not really about servants long ago. It is about us. Every listener becomes the servant. Every moment becomes the waiting. The master's delay becomes the space where real character is formed. The question is no longer theoretical, it becomes deeply personal. How do we live when prayers seem unanswered? How do we treat others when no one is watching? How do we manage what has been entrusted to us, time, relationships, influence, faith, when the reward feels far away? This parable dares to ask what most people avoid: if today were examined by eternity, what story would it tell? There is something almost haunting about the idea that ordinary days carry eternal weight. Feeding others, showing kindness, staying disciplined, choosing integrity, these acts rarely go viral, yet according to Jesus, they echo loudly in heaven. The faithful servant does not obsess over the master's return date. He focuses on the master's will. And that shift changes everything. Anxiety fades. Purpose sharpens. Waiting becomes meaningful. This transforms the parable from a warning into an invitation to live awake, present, and intentional in a world that constantly tries to lull us into spiritual sleep. The beauty of this teaching is that it does not threaten to scare people into obedience, it calls them into trust. It reminds us that God's delay is not absence. Silence is not neglect. Waiting is not wasted. In fact, waiting is where faith is refined. And here lies one of the most surprising realities: the servant who remains faithful is already living in reward, because a life aligned with purpose carries its own peace. Long before the master returns, the faithful servant lives free from fear, free from guilt, and free from regret. As the narrative continues to unfold in the listener's heart, it becomes clear that this parable reshapes how we view success. Success is no longer about being seen, but about being found faithful. It is not about how loudly we speak about faith, but how deeply we live it. The faithful servant teaches us that heaven is watching the unseen, honoring the overlooked, and preparing rewards beyond imagination for those who endure with love. And now, as the music softens and the final words draw near, the story leaves us with a lingering echo. One day, the waiting will end. One day, the unseen will be revealed. One day, every faithful moment will make sense. Until then, the invitation remains simple and powerful: live today as if it matters forever. Serve with love. Stay awake in spirit. Be faithful in the small things. Because when the Master returns, the greatest joy will not be in what we achieved, but in hearing that one line every heart longs for: well done. If this story stirred something inside you, if it made you pause, reflect, or see your everyday life differently, don't let that feeling fade. Let it grow. Share this message with someone who needs hope. Like this video so more hearts can find it. Subscribe to stay connected to stories that awaken faith and purpose. And remember this gentle truth as you step back into your ordinary world: every faithful act, no matter how small, carries eternal meaning, and the quiet life lived with integrity is never invisible to God. And as the echo of those words settles, the story keeps breathing, because faithfulness was never meant to end at the closing line of a parable. It spills into real mornings and late nights, into moments when exhaustion whispers that no one would notice if you stopped caring. This is where the message becomes deeply human. The faithful servant is not a flawless figure carved in stone, he is someone who chooses again and again to show up. He wakes up on days that feel heavy. He serves when motivation is low. He stays gentle in a world that rewards hardness. And that is exactly why this story refuses to grow old, because every generation finds itself standing in the same place, holding the same quiet question in its hands: will I live for convenience, or will I live for calling? There is a cinematic tension hidden here that feels almost invisible at first. Time passes. Nothing dramatic happens. No miracles interrupt the routine. Yet heaven leans in during these unremarkable hours. This is one of the most surprising truths the parable reveals without ever shouting it: God does his deepest work in silence. While the servant feeds others, order is maintained. While discipline continues, chaos is held back. The world keeps moving forward because someone remained faithful in a role that seemed small. That thought alone has the power to change how a person sees their own life. Suddenly, the job that feels unnoticed, the kindness that goes unthanked, the prayers whispered in the dark all take on new weight. They are not wasted. They are forming something eternal. The wicked servant, on the other hand, becomes a warning written in slow motion. His downfall doesn't arrive with thunder. It arrives through delay, through distraction, through the lie that tomorrow is guaranteed. He assumes time is on his side, and that assumption costs him everything. This part of the story feels uncomfortably close because it reflects a struggle almost everyone knows. How easy it is to relax standards when accountability feels far away. How quickly compassion fades when patience runs out. The parable doesn't condemn weakness, it exposes complacency. It shows what happens when responsibility is treated casually and trust is taken lightly. And then, without announcement, the master returns. This moment isn't described with spectacle, yet it carries the weight of eternity. It reminds us that the most important moments in life rarely warn us before they arrive. One day becomes the day. One choice becomes the turning point. One life becomes the testimony. The faithful servant is not surprised because his life has been shaped by readiness, not fear. He has nothing to hide. Nothing to regret. His reward is not just authority, but intimacy with the Master, a deeper trust, a greater role in something that truly matters. What makes this parable unforgettable is how gently it presses against the soul. It doesn't force change, it invites reflection. It asks questions that linger long after the story ends. What does faithfulness look like in your life right now? Where have you been tempted to grow careless because the waiting feels long? Who has God entrusted to your care, even if that care feels small or unseen? These questions don't demand quick answers. They are meant to be carried, allowed to shape decisions, attitudes, and priorities over time. As the narrative fades into stillness, one final realization rises quietly but powerfully. The faithful servant never lived obsessed with the reward, yet he received one greater than expected. He simply lived aligned with trust. And that alignment transformed waiting into worship, responsibility into purpose, and ordinary days into sacred ground. This is the kind of life that leaves a mark not just on history, but on eternity. So as this story closes, let it close softly, like a gentle hand on the heart. Let it remind you that faithfulness is not loud, but it is unstoppable. That integrity in the unseen is shaping a future you cannot yet imagine. That every act of love, discipline, and obedience is being recorded beyond time. And when the waiting finally ends, when the unseen becomes visible, it will be clear that nothing faithful was ever forgotten. If this message spoke to you, if it gave words to something you've been feeling but couldn't explain, let others experience it too. Like this video so it can reach more hearts. Share it with someone walking through a season of waiting. Subscribe to stay connected to stories that awaken purpose and faith. And carry this truth with you into your everyday life. You may feel ordinary, but when you live faithfully, your life is telling a story heaven loves to watch. And even after the screen fades to black, the message keeps walking beside you, because this parable was never meant to stay inside a video. It follows you into the quiet places where decisions are made without witnesses. It sits with you when no one is clapping, when progress feels slow, when faith feels more like endurance than excitement. This is where the faithful servant becomes more than a character, he becomes a way of living. A steady heartbeat of obedience in a world addicted to urgency. A reminder that showing up consistently is more powerful than showing off occasionally. There is something deeply comforting and deeply challenging about knowing that God's attention is not drawn by noise, but by faithfulness. The servant does not try to predict the master's return. He does not panic. He does not procrastinate. He simply aligns his life with trust. And that alignment brings peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything going right, but the kind that comes from knowing you are living right. This kind of peace doesn't depend on circumstances, it grows from conviction. The parable quietly dismantles the lie that significance comes from scale. It tells us that feeding others at the right time matters. That guarding what has been entrusted matters. That love expressed through responsibility matters. Even when the world overlooks it. Even when results aren't immediate. Even when fatigue creeps in. The faithful servant teaches us that patience is not passive, it is active obedience stretched over time. And here is where the story becomes almost prophetic. In a generation constantly distracted, constantly rushing, constantly searching for shortcuts, faithfulness becomes radical. Choosing integrity when compromise is easier becomes revolutionary. Remaining kind when bitterness feels justified becomes courageous. Staying awake spiritually when everything pushes toward numbness becomes an act of quiet defiance. The faithful servant is not dramatic, but his life resists decay. He becomes a living barrier against chaos simply by doing what is right, day after day. The master's return, when it finally comes, does not rewrite the servant's story, it reveals it. That is the weight of this truth. The ending does not change who the servant was. It simply exposes it. And that realization carries both hope and responsibility. Hope, because every faithful choice is already shaping a beautiful ending. Responsibility, because neglect and carelessness also leave fingerprints that cannot be erased by excuses. As this reflection reaches its final breath, let it land gently, not as pressure, but as clarity. You do not have to be perfect to be faithful. You do not have to be famous to matter. You do not have to know the timing to live ready. All that is asked is trust expressed through consistency. Love expressed through service. Faith expressed through obedience. And so the invitation remains open, quiet, and powerful. Live as if what you do today echoes beyond today. Serve as if someone's future depends on it, because it might. Stay awake in spirit, even when the night feels long. Because when the waiting ends, and the unseen is finally seen, the greatest reward will not be applause, success, or recognition. It will be the deep, unshakable joy of knowing that your life, in all its ordinary faithfulness, was never ordinary at all. If this message stayed with you, let it travel further. Like this video so it can reach souls who are quietly waiting. Share it with someone who feels unseen but is still showing up. Subscribe and walk with us through stories that awaken faith, purpose, and hope. And carry this truth with you as you step back into your day: faithfulness is never lost, waiting is never wasted, and every quiet act done with love is already part of an eternal story. And even now, after all the words, after all the reflections, there is a silence that remains, and that silence is intentional. Because the parable of the faithful servant ultimately invites stillness. It asks you to sit with your own life long enough to hear what it is saying. Not what you post. Not what you promise. Not what you plan someday. But what you are consistently becoming. In that stillness, the story speaks again, softly but clearly, reminding you that faithfulness is not proven in one heroic moment, but revealed in thousands of quiet ones. There will be days when doing the right thing feels invisible. Days when kindness seems to cost more than it gives. Days when waiting feels longer than you imagined it could be. The faithful servant knows those days well. Yet he does not let delay harden his heart. He does not let silence rewrite his values. He understands something most never fully grasp, that trust is not built by outcomes, but by obedience sustained over time. This is where spiritual maturity is formed, not in excitement, but in endurance. And perhaps the most moving realization of all is this: the master trusted the servant before the servant ever proved himself. Responsibility was given first, faithfulness followed. That means your life right now is already wrapped in trust. The breath you have. The time you hold. The people you influence. None of it is accidental. All of it is entrusted. And how you treat what is entrusted becomes your response to that trust. As the story finally settles into the heart, it leaves behind a quiet confidence. You may not control timing. You may not see immediate results. You may not always feel strong. But you can be faithful. And that choice, repeated daily, shapes a life that stands steady when everything else shakes. When the return finally comes, whenever and however it does, it will not catch the faithful servant off guard. Not because he knew the moment, but because he honored the mission. So let this be the last echo that stays with you: you are not forgotten in the waiting. You are not unseen in the serving. You are not insignificant in the ordinary. Every moment lived with integrity is already aligned with eternity. Keep showing up. Keep loving well. Keep doing what is right, even when it is quiet. Because faithfulness, though rarely celebrated by the world, is always remembered by God. If this story resonated with your soul, let it move beyond you. Like this video so the message can reach those who are quietly holding on. Share it with someone who needs to know their faithfulness still matters. Subscribe and stay connected to words that bring depth, hope, and purpose. And carry this with you into every ordinary moment ahead. The waiting is shaping you, the serving is defining you, and your life, lived faithfully, is telling a story that will never be lost. And Jesus Christ taught them, saying, "Do not measure your life by what is seen, for what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen carries eternal weight." A life is not made meaningful by how loudly it is noticed, but by how faithfully it is lived. Many seek signs, but the greatest sign is a heart that remains obedient when no sign is given. Stay awake, not with fearful eyes, but with faithful hearts. For the hour you expect least is often the hour truth reveals itself. Blessed is the one who serves with love while waiting, who chooses righteousness when delay tempts the soul, who continues in kindness when reward feels far away. Such a life is already rich in the eyes of heaven. Do not store your hope in tomorrow, for tomorrow is not promised, but today is entrusted. What you do with what has been given to you speaks louder than what you say you believe. The faithful are not those who know the timing, but those who honor the calling. They feed when it is time to feed. They forgive when it is hard to forgive. They endure when others grow careless. Let your faith be proven in the ordinary. For the Father sees what is done in secret, and nothing done with love is ever forgotten. Many wait for the moment to be great, but greatness is found in obedience stretched across time. Whoever is faithful in little is already being prepared for much. So live not as those who sleep through purpose, but as those who walk in light. Be ready, not because you fear the return, but because you love the Master. For when the waiting ends, joy will not belong to those who rushed ahead, but to those who remained faithful until the end. And Jesus continued to teach them, saying, "Do not let your hearts grow dull because the road feels long. A seed does not shout while it grows beneath the soil, yet in its time it breaks the ground with life. So it is with faithfulness. What you practice in patience will one day stand in power. The Father is not delayed as people measure delay, He is working where eyes cannot see. Do not say in your hearts, 'My strength is small,' for a faithful heart multiplies strength. The lamp that is kept burning through the night does more than chase darkness away, it guides those who are lost. You were not entrusted with light to admire it, but to carry it. And even when your hands tremble, if you do not let go, the light will remain. Learn this truth and let it settle deep within you. The weight of a life is not measured by moments of triumph, but by endurance in love. Many begin with zeal and fade in waiting, but blessed are those who remain steady. They do not rush ahead of obedience, nor do they fall behind hope. They walk with purpose, step by step, trusting that every step matters. Do not grow harsh with one another, saying the time is long and mercy can wait. For mercy withheld hardens the heart that withholds it. The faithful servant guards not only what is given, but the spirit with which he serves. Gentleness is strength restrained. Patience is power refined. Love is obedience fulfilled. Look at the hours you are given. They pass like shadows, yet each one carries a choice. What you do when no one sees is known. What you forgive when it is undeserved is remembered. What you endure without complaint is written beyond time. Nothing faithful is ever lost. So live awake, not anxious. Ready, not afraid. Let your lives speak before your words do. Let your faith be found working when the night feels longest. For the return will come like morning, certain, unstoppable, and full of light. And those who kept watch with faithful hearts will rise with joy, not because they knew the hour, but because they loved the Master. If this teaching has touched your heart, let it move through you and beyond you. Like this message so it can reach those still waiting in silence. Share it with someone who feels unseen but continues to serve. Subscribe and stay close to teachings that awaken faith and purpose. And remember this as you return to your ordinary moments: faithfulness is not quiet to heaven, obedience is never wasted, and a life lived in trust is already shining in eternity. And Jesus spoke still further, his voice calm yet carrying the weight of eternity, saying, "Let your hearts rest in this truth, nothing you do in faith is ever empty. Even when your hands feel tired, even when your prayers feel unanswered, even when your obedience feels unnoticed, heaven is closer than you think. What the world overlooks, the Father treasures. What feels small to you is often shaping something far greater than you can see. Do not rush past today searching for tomorrow. Today is holy ground. Today is where love is practiced. Today is where faith is proven. Each moment you choose patience instead of anger, kindness instead of hardness, obedience instead of ease, you are writing a story that reaches beyond time. And one day, when the waiting is over, you will see that every quiet step mattered. Take this teaching into your life gently. Let it comfort you when you feel unseen. Let it correct you when your heart grows weary. Let it remind you that faithfulness is not about perfection, but about persistence. The sweetest lives are not the loudest ones, but the ones rooted deeply in trust. A faithful heart is a peaceful heart, and a peaceful heart becomes a light to others without ever trying to shine. And now, as this message comes to rest, let it leave you encouraged, not burdened. Learning is sweetest when it brings hope, and truth is most powerful when it draws us closer together. May this teaching stay with you long after the video ends, guiding your thoughts, softening your spirit, and strengthening your walk each day. If this message touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video so it can reach more souls who need encouragement. Share it with someone who may be waiting quietly and needs hope today. Subscribe to this channel and stay with us, because together we are building a space where faith is nurtured, hearts are lifted, and everyday life is filled with meaning. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for walking this journey with us. May you carry peace, learn gently, live faithfully, and return again, knowing this channel is a place where your heart can rest and grow. And as the final words settle, let them rest softly within you, not as something to remember only for a moment, but as something to live by. This teaching was never meant to impress the mind alone, but to calm the heart and guide the soul. Faithfulness is not heavy when it is carried with love. Learning is sweetest when it leads us toward peace. And every step taken with sincerity becomes a blessing, even when the road feels long. Carry this with you as you move forward: your quiet goodness matters, your patience is shaping something beautiful, and your willingness to keep going is already a victory. Life does not ask us to be extraordinary, only faithful. And in that faithfulness, joy slowly grows, hope quietly strengthens, and purpose gently reveals itself. If this message gave you even a moment of peace, encouragement, or clarity, please like this video so it can reach more hearts that need the same comfort. Share it with someone you care about, someone who may feel unseen but is still doing their best. And subscribe to this channel, because every video here is created to help you learn gently, grow steadily, and feel connected in your journey. Thank you for spending this time with us. May you leave this video feeling lighter, wiser, and encouraged. Keep coming back, keep learning, keep growing, because this channel is not just about watching videos, it's about walking together, one faithful step at a time. And now, before you leave, just pause for a moment. Take a slow breath. Let your heart be still. If you are tired, this message is for you. If you feel unseen, this message is for you. If you are trying to stay faithful even when no one seems to notice, this message is for you. Remember this sweet truth: you are not forgotten. Every quiet prayer, every small act of love, every time you chose patience over anger and hope over despair, it all matters. Even when the world moves on, heaven never looks away. Faithfulness grows silently, but its reward is eternal. Let this teaching stay with you like a gentle light as you return to your daily life. Let it remind you that learning never ends, growth takes time, and love is always worth it. You don't have to rush. You don't have to prove anything. Just keep walking, one faithful step at a time. If this video touched your heart even a little, please like it so this message can reach someone else who may be silently struggling. Share it with a loved one who needs comfort, hope, or encouragement today. And subscribe to this channel, because every video here is created to help you learn gently, grow spiritually, and feel connected, not alone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening with an open heart. May you leave this video feeling peaceful, strengthened, and loved. Come back again, because this is a place where hearts heal, faith grows, and ordinary lives are reminded that they carry eternal meaning.